Hello, my name is Georgios Chapantidis. I'm an astrologer, and in this video I will explain how Saturn goes through the 12th houses. Because using Saturn, you can actually tell what kind of lessons you will learn, at what time, what will be your focus, because with Saturn, when Saturn transits through a sign, it takes about 2 to 3 years per sign, which means it will take that much time to transit through a house. So if it takes that long to transit through a house, that's how long it takes to learn a lesson. And that's the equation. It's like mathematics, That's how long it takes for each of these aspects. So the first house, which is the first house, will be about identity, aggression, conflict, and confidence. And these are basically the main lessons you learn with Saturn when it goes through that house. So you can simply use the keywords for each house, and that's how you explain Saturn when it goes through that. Now, what happens exactly when Saturn goes to the first house? Because Saturn transits are about focus. So the main thing you focus on will be the house that the Saturn is transiting in. So it's about focus, constriction. So you'll get challenges in that house. You'll get lessons through adversaries. So you may find that there are enemies in that house that Saturn is transiting in. So the lesson may come through other people. And if it comes through other people, it can also come through other events, accidents, misfortune. God sends you a narcissist, your job, your boss. Obstacles can appear in all sorts of ways. It's simply that an obstacle will be presented, and Saturn is like a test. Test to see how will you deal with the issue. Will you learn or will you not? The quicker you learn what it is that you're supposed to learn, the quicker it's going to be over in terms of punishment, pain, suffering. Because Saturn is not about happiness. Saturn in traditional astrology relates to depression. It relates to things are not going so well, It's about deadlines. It's like a countdown. If you look at the time, Saturn's the Lord of Time. In Vedic astrology, they call it the Lord of Karma. So if it's the Lord of Karma, it's the Lord of cause and effect. So whatever negative actions you have will be punished. Negative actions immediately lead to negative consequences in that house. So you have to look at it like your boss is testing you. You're going to school, you have an assignment, you have a test, and Saturn will see if you are prepared for that test, and if you're not, then it will simply force you to prepare so that when the transit is over, after this 2 to 3 years, you will have learned everything you needed to, and you're now an expert. Mastery, competence, expertise. So these are the things you learn. Things you learn. Yeah? And this. Let's do this maybe in another color. You know, so we can differentiate it. About concentration. La, la, la. Do, 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 do. So, yeah. So now we have a first house. Like I said, the first house is about identity, aggression, conflict, confidence. So, what does it look like when Saturn is in that house with all those keywords? Well, what it could look like is that your identity will be challenged. Something might happen that will make you feel like your identity is no longer working. Your identity may be crushed. You know, Saturn, like I said, is about constriction. So if you think you're smart, and that's what the identity is based on. Your identity is basically deterministic of your confidence, your ontological security. So if you are insecure about certain flaws you have in your personality, Saturn will expose these insecurities. If you're trying to cover up certain insecurities through other compensatory mechanisms, for example, by being strong, smart, pretty, by being an expert in something different, to simply differentiate yourself from others and to assert your identity in that manner, then Saturn will challenge that. It will create something that will make you question the validity, the strength, the integrity of that which you have built your identity on. If you think you're smart, Saturn will show you that you're not smart. You know, it's about humbling you, which of course can be very uncomfortable. Saturn is not about fun, it's about creating problems for you and seeing that you'll find a way to fix them. So that's what you can expect of the first house. Let's look at the second house. The second house is about boundaries, physical possessions, talents, values, earth element stuff. So Saturn might try to see how strong your boundaries are. If you don't have any boundaries, Saturn will punish you for not having any boundaries. If you have very strong boundaries that may be actually very rigid, inflexible, heavily armored, if it's too much, if your energy overall is too heavy, if you are a heavy defensive individual, if you don't budge, if you're slow to change, or if on the other hand you change too much and you don't settle, if in other words there's a lack of balance around boundaries, then again Saturn will put salt into the wound. It will expose it. Think about it like this. There's always something that can be fixed. There's always something that Saturn will tear open. Saturn tear open problems, make a problem bad. Yeah, that's how you can look at it. If you have a wound, it may be a small wound, it doesn't bother you now, but as soon as Saturn goes through that wound, then it will bother you, because Saturn will tear it open. Physical possessions, talents, values, of course. Maybe your possessions will be taken away if you're too attached to them. Or if you're not attached at all, if you're too detached, then of course likewise Saturn will take things away from you. Saturn will teach you ownership. That's another keyword, ownership, okay? So, of course, it really again is about balance. Third house. Let's talk about this one. The third house is of communication. Everybody knows that. It is also the house of siblings, close and superficial encounters. Now with close I don't mean intimate, I mean close, so like people who live in the same city as you. This is also about personality. So what is it, the personality that comes forth in your interactions? How do you communicate? What do you base your communication on? What are your intentions for communicating? These things will be challenged by Saturn. If your communication is not getting you what you need in your life, if your communication is inflexible, rigid, weak, or dishonest, then Saturn will force you to see that by giving you consequences, right? It's always the same thing. Saturn will screw with you. Saturn does not like you. Of course, Saturn loves you, but it's tough love, okay? It's not like sunshine and rainbows. The fourth house actually is about self-centeredness. It's about self-care, attachments, intuition, family. Again, if you're not self-centered enough, if you care too little about yourself, if you don't address your emotions, if you don't validate yourself, self-validation, okay, self-validation, these things are missing. And don't be surprised if Saturn will make you feel very invalidated, will make you feel emotionally unstable. It will make you feel unrooted. If this house is about your roots, attachments, if you're not attached to yourself, to your own needs, that will get screwed. So maybe needs, into family roots, if you're unrooted, you get fucked. You really be unrooted. It will get worse. If you have a too rooted, you're not moving, you're at the same place the whole time, you refuse to budge, then Saturn will take that stability, that safety, that security away from you. Very similar to second house, only in this case, the stability will be emotional. The stability will be about dependencies. So things that you are dependent on, those are your attachments. These things will be taken away. Why? Why is Saturn taking my things away? Well, so you learn how to be more emotionally independent. Think about it it's like the house of infancy. The fourth house is the most infantile, the most primitive aspect of emotions in the natal chart. That's why it's at the bottom on the IC on the fourth house. So when Saturn goes through the fourth house, it will automatically touch the IC. When it touches the IC, it will move things around in your home, those things that are the most foundational of your being, through which out you simply cannot exist in the world. You cannot be emotionally stable. You cannot regulate yourself. These are the things that Saturn is going to screw with, to see just how insecure or secure you are with those things. Let's say that if your attachments are superficial, if you can't be intimate with yourself or anybody else, then Saturn may send somebody to exploit that, to hurt you, to deceive you, or somebody may die, somebody who you're dependent upon for emotional regulation. Maybe you're going to therapy for years and now your therapist is dying. These kind of things could happen with Saturn. Just reading the comments. 4th house in Aries. Do you mean in the natal chart or transiting? Because I'm talking about transits. But if you have it in the natal chart, then all these issues that I mentioned here, you could apply that to your natal Saturn if you want. These are the issues you'll have to deal with all your life if Saturn is in your birth chart in that location. If it's in transit, then it's only for a short time, okay? Transits, short term, 2 to 3 years. Birth, placement, forever, no, not forever, until you die, okay? For the rest of your incarnation. It's the main focus. It's like, my subconscious is so focused, I know I have to get my shit together in that aspect, okay? That's how you can read it. So you need to get your shit together with your attachments. Maybe you were not allowed to attach to your parents and your parents were just a huge fuck up. Basically, wherever Saturn is placed in your birth chart, that's a fuck up. Something went very wrong there. And it's your job to fix it. So of course you get very serious about it. You may feel very fearful. So another keyword for Saturn, fear. Okay, fear. Very, very big keyword actually. In red, yeah, red. A little bit bigger. Fear, okay? You will experience fear of those things in that house. Period. Okay? I say period because it really is that simple. It's not complicated. Okay? So 5th house. The 5th house. My father passed when I was 5. Well, there you go. See? Confirm my point. Period. So 5th house is the house of self-love. Okay? Self-love. Yes, everybody knows about romance too. But that's not what... I mean, sure, Saturn will focus on that when it goes through that house. But seriously, I've never heard anybody talk about self-love before. That's my term. And you are privileged to listen to it. So when Saturn goes through your 5th house, it will address issues with self-expression, creativity, love in general, but I also mentioned self-love, but in general. Self-love, because the 5th house is ruled by the sun. It's about your self-image, okay? Better. Your self-image determines how good you feel about yourself if you're able to shine and do so with confidence so other people can see you, so other people can pay attention to you, because you're doing something significant. Okay. Okay. Significance. You see, if you're not significant enough in your life, if you feel insignificant, if you feel worthless, if you hate yourself, Saturn will really, really force you to be very uncomfortable because of that. So you may have some kind of mental breakdown if you hate yourself and Saturn goes through that house with that attitude. If forever you love yourself and everything's fine, you don't have any issues with your 5th house, if the issue is not you so much, maybe the issues will then be in your relationships, in your sex life. Maybe you will feel unfulfilled. Maybe you'll feel like nobody can see just how great you are, and you feel very lonely. The 5th house deals with those interpersonal issues. Actually, the first 4 signs are all about the personality, all focused on the self. The next 4 signs until the 8th sign are actually about your intimate one-on-one relationship. So this is also about intimacy, the 5th house. So if Saturn goes through that house, you may be afraid that you're not expressing yourself enough. People aren't noticing you enough. Maybe you need to perform. Maybe you need to make a YouTube channel. Like honestly, 5th house for a lot of people, they have a 5th house Saturn transit when they are making a YouTube channel, when they are getting elevated in their career, in their professional life, because they think, well, if I don't shine now, it's never going to happen. There's a sense of urgency. Okay, another word. Urgency with Saturn. But the clock is ticking. Clock is ticking. Yeah. So I just make things up as I go to make this more easy to understand. Next house I'll talk about is the 6th house. The 6th house is the house of work. That's the worst house, in my opinion. Debatable, but I don't like that house. Routine, diet, self-preservation, health. And I'm not saying that I don't like that house because I don't have these things. You'll probably find, look, if you're at the end of this video and you've gone through all the 12 houses, because we're halfway through, so a little spoiler for you, anybody's watching. If any house, and you look at the keywords and you're like, fuck, I hope Saturn is not in that house, because I'm terrible at these things. Try to make sure that Saturn is not in that house. Yet. Try to fix these things before Saturn goes into that house, because otherwise it's going to be bad for you. You will be depressed for sure. And you don't want to be depressed, right? The 7th house, you know, if you'll get health problems, of course, if it's about health. If you're too critical with your health, you get mental problems. You get issues with guilt. Yes, it's another keyword for that house. It's the service axis with the 12th house. It's the axis about delusion. So if you feel guilty about not doing good enough, you may have some issues in that house. And Saturn will make them worse. So you change them. You know, it's like, if something is not bad enough, time to make it bad enough. The 7th house, the house of relationships, contracts, the law, justice, open enemies. So this is an interesting one. If you have Saturn going through the 7th house, it will be going on the axis of a descendant. That means that it will be opposite to your ascendant. That means that your close one-on-one encounters will be challenged by Saturn. But it will be challenged not from the inside, like in the 1st house, but through the outside, for other people. You will get issues with other people. Maybe your friendships will be questioned. You'll feel like things are breaking apart. You don't know who to trust anymore. You don't know if this relationship is a good idea. And this is probably a time in your life where you're thinking about marriage. If you are already in a marriage, you may be thinking about breaking it up. If you're not in marriage, you may think about doing a marriage. I mean, anything that's missing in that house, when you're lonely, when you don't have the relationship that you want, you will get very serious about that and you will feel like it's time to make it happen. At the beginning of the 7th house, you'll feel like, I think now it's time to have a relationship. Now it's time to start dating. Now it's time to consider breaking up with this person. I mean, Literally, whatever it is you're doing it wrong. When Saturn is through that house, is like, whatever it is you're doing, you have to change it up. That's why people don't like Saturn. Because it's just an indicator that something is happening that's just not good enough. Okay? It's just not good enough. And you'll have to ask yourself, will you stay or will you go? Now, Saturn has me daddy forever stalking. Oh, I hope not. I would not want daddy Saturn stalk me forever. Well, at least, technically it is stalking you forever though, right? Saturn is always in some house. So technically, yeah, it is forever stalking you. Now, if it goes through the 8th house of stalking you, it will deal with issues with dependencies, things that you have to separate from. Separation. Usually, you can probably tell. There's a pattern here. Look, if the 7th house is about marriage, and the 8th house is about separation, most of the time, people, when the 7th house transit is over, they're probably separated. If they are not, they'll still think about separating while they're in the relationship. Because it's about individuation, that house. It's about honesty. It's about demons in your closet. Lol. Demons in your closet, what does it mean? Well, it means things that you're hiding, your vulnerabilities, weakness, Saturn will squeeze that weakness out of you. Saturn will make you see the things you're depending on to compensate for the things that you're lacking. It's about power issues. So if you're lacking power, if you're not strong enough, it's time to be strong. Saturn punishes the weak in that house. 8th house is the arguably, as far as I've read, as far as I've seen, right now, Saturn is in my 8th house, and I believe it is probably the most difficult one. The 6th house is very, very difficult Saturn transit. Yeah. 7th house, I know, is not easy, but 8th house, if you're weak, you'll be destroyed. You'll suffer. Of course, you'll suffer in any house. But because the 8th house is so focused on your emotions, on your sanity, on keeping that which is hidden, and that which is supposed to be apart. If you're supposed to cut the umbilical cord when your child is born, of course, even if you cut that cord, after all the blood has been taken out and the child is ready to leave the mother's womb, it's still going to hurt to cut that cord. There's just no way, no matter how well you're doing, it will still hurt to separate. And that's why it's a difficult house. Because pain is part of the healing process. Pain is part of the healing process. Okay, that's a very, very important part to understand about this 8th house. So let's go for the ninth house. Where do I get this accent from? I literally have no clue. I'm just making it up. The 9th house is about, well, everybody will say travel. But I'm not going to use that word. I refuse, because this is way too boring. How can you say it's about travel? It sounds so cliche. You got to be brain dead not to want to get a better word. So let me give you a better word. What is travel about? If you're going around, it's about adventure. Yeah, of course. But what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to distract yourself? Are you trying to escape? Are you trying to change your mind? It's about stretching your mind. It's about expansion. I know it's not a far stretch, but it's about changing consciousness. Yeah. It's about philosophy, religion, pilgrimage. These issues, however, aren't enough to describe the house. Because 99% of you watching this, and you read all these 9th house keywords, you'll be like, but what if I'm not traveling? What if I'm not religious? Huh? You'll be like, huh? Because this is bullshit. It's about ego inflation, okay? Ego inflation. Because the 9th house is about grandiosity. Okay? These are the keywords you will be learning today, which you will not learn online. Because most astrologers are boring and they don't know anything. Except, of course, if you're watching this, you know who knows something. And why is the 9th house about ego inflation? Well, because the 9th house is about getting out of yourself, going beyond your limits, beyond your limitations. And of course, in order to stretch your mind, in order to break some rules, in order to ascend, there must be some kind of ego inflation. What does that mean? Ego inflation simply means I feel like I can do anything. I feel optimistic, enthusiastic. You know, that's why Sagittarius, which the 9th house rules, Jupiter, is about optimism. Malignant optimism, yeah? Malignant. Because you think that by traveling, all your problems will go away. You think by using religion and by getting some meaning in your life, that everything will start to make sense, and then you'll be fine. And you know what to do, and your ego, because the 9th house is about ego inflation, and it's a fire house, meaning it's about personality and development, but development will be assured, and your relationships will finally have meaning in your life, because it's the last of the fire houses, meaning it is about the world outside. Okay, the outside, another keyword. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, if you have Saturn in the 9th house, you must learn these things. If you don't know these keywords, which you, by the way, cannot read anywhere online, again, you're privileged to watch this, then you will have no idea what you're supposed to learn. Because Saturn, again, fear, constriction, urgency, tears open problems, make the problem bad. Because if you don't have meaning in your life, if you don't know what to do with yourself, then you have a tendency to be grandiose, to make something up, to lose yourself in fantasy worlds, where you can artificially create meaning to fill the hole, the emptiness. Because the opposite of meaning is emptiness, right? It's very logical. So if the opposite is emptiness, then emptiness is what you will experience when Saturn goes through that house. And you will find grandiosity to be a primitive defense mechanism to make that emptiness go away. To go beyond your limits, you actually have to do something. You actually have to create some meaning. And because the 9th was ruled by Jupiter, not by Neptune, it can't just be about art, something artificial, something fake. No, you must actually do something with your fire, with your motivation, with your willpower, with your drive. There must be some kind of investment, personal investment, that needs to be made when Saturn goes through that house, okay? So you will basically feel like no matter what you invest in, no matter what you believe in, beliefs, no matter what you believe in, is not solid enough. Saturn is about solidity. Okay? Solidity, constriction, restriction. It's about being real. Boom. Lol. In cursive. Okay? In cursive. In cursive. Being real. You have to be real about all of these things. And if you're not, Saturn will simply, it will not care if you're trying to make something up. You know, the fake it till you make it will not make it. Yeah? Free exclamation marks. Not one, free. Fake it till you make it is not going to work. And that's a big mistake a lot of people do with 9th house transits in January. They try to fake it here. With the 10th house, we'll be going through Saturn's favorite house. Yes, of course. Interesting, I don't relate to anything in the 9th. To anything? What do you mean? Do you have a natal Saturn in the 9th? Or a transiting in the 9th? Because I gave more keywords for the 9th house than for any other house. By the way, it's kind of ironic because I didn't mean to do that. Because the 9th house, actually, my natal Saturn is in the 9th house. So that may be a reason why I'm a bit of an expert on that house is compared to the other house. I mean, I know about the other houses, but I know a lot more about this house than the other ones. So I wonder, how can you not relate? I mean, if it's in your natal chart or your transits, you'll have to tell me. Your natal Saturn, well, then it's the same as mine. It's the same as mine. So what are you not relating to? Because, look. There may be a reason I can explain why you're not relating. Saturn, like I said here, is what problems. Problems. Okay? Problems. So if you want to expand, by the way, another keyword, sports, changing consciousness, philosophy, religion, you get very critical with these things. You feel like these things are not working for you. Okay? Does it make sense? Like, you're afraid that the 9th house matters in your life are just going to come crashing down. With any natal house Saturn, you will feel as if I need to master this. I need to be super critical, laser vision on this. Because otherwise, you may feel inflexible in this area as well, initially speaking. So for example, you may have difficulty in sports, expanding your physical body. You may feel as if you can't actually be grandiose because you're so critical with yourself. You'll be like, I can't be grandiose. You're self-aware of your grandiosity, okay? Another keyword, self-awareness. Look, there's a lot of keywords for Saturn, but these are really the main ones. Because Saturn doesn't allow you to be stupid. Doesn't allow you to fail. Saturn is about making sure that shit is going to work. You know? It must work or you get fucked. It must work or you get fucked. That simple. So of course, you also say it sits on your midhaven. Okay. If you want to talk about the midhaven, I will talk about the midhaven as I talk about the next house. So the 10th house is the house of the midhaven. By the way, 4th house, I see. 1st house, ascendant. And 7th house, descendant. Yes, my children. By the way, you kind of, this is kind of cutting out, but you know, as long as you can see the houses, it doesn't really matter, I suppose. 10th house. Da-da-dum. Keywords. 10th house keywords are career, public recognition, public status, okay, better. Your reputation, your professional expertise, my child. Your expertise, so that would be like, am I good at this or am I not good at this? My job, my career. If I'm to succeed, of course I must be good at what I'm doing because everybody will be seeing that. My status, my career is dependent upon that expertise. So of course it's intimately one and the same. There cannot be any recognition without success, obviously. So these are the things that Saturn will be touching upon here. By the way, I also have Saturn on the midhaven. So Saturn on the midhaven is opposite to the IC. So if the opposite is about self-issues, self-related issues, with attachments, your intuition, your own needs, emotional, the 10th house is very cold. It's a Saturn-ruled house. So Saturn will improve the density of that house. I mean, everybody knows we're living in a matrix, kind of. So with your job, with your career, you'll feel like, I have to make my career work. It's my time to show what my career is going to be in this life. It's about examination and reevaluation of what it is that you're doing, and if it's not good enough, then you may quit your job. If it is good enough, or if you feel like now is the time for promotion because you don't feel content with sitting where you are, because Saturn doesn't want you to feel content. Saturn wants you to feel like it's time to make it better. So of course, you'll be working extra hard for the promotion. You'll be looking at your boss and you'll be thinking about strategies. How can I make this promotion? You know, do I have to bribe him? Do I have to work harder? You'll be watching videos online. You'll be buying a business course. You'll be making an altar, praying to Saturn, please make my career work. You'll be doing whatever it takes. And you'll be looking at your social media. You'll be looking at your pictures you're sharing of yourself online. How do you look? How do other people perceive you? Do they think that you're the shit? Or do they think that you got nothing to show for? These things will also be addressed. So if you're looking like a little scared cat who can't really do anything, who's like a child like me 2 years ago, if you're looking like a nobody or just like a random person, if you're not being trustworthy in the public image, then you will be looking at that and you think, fuck, I have to change that. Time to get that suit, time to go to the photographer, get those pictures, you know. The 10th house is also relating to pride. It's actually the highest point in the natal chart. So if you're proud about your accomplishments so far, if you feel you've been doing very well, Saturn will actually tune that down, will humble you down, will take you to make a very critical assessment of what it is that you're doing. If somehow your products are not good enough. Maybe there's something that has been working not quite right. Let's say you had a company, you're selling some kind of product, some kind of food, and the heavy metal testing that you've been doing is a cheap one. You don't want Saturn in your 10th house knocking at your door and being like, okay, let's test your career, let's see how good your heavy metal testing is. You don't want Saturn to find out that your heavy metal testing is cheap, because otherwise you may end up with getting sued and getting fucked because, it's cheap. You didn't do your due diligence, and now people find out there's heavy metals in your products and your career is being ruined. You don't want that to happen. So Saturn is testing you how solid, how safe are you up there. I want to see you are in your position in your little CEO spot there. I know you made a little career for yourself. Let's see. Can you stay there? Do you have what it takes? Now all the things that could possibly go wrong will go wrong. And when that happens, you want to be prepared. If you're not prepared for this, you may just lose your job. You may find yourself in despair and you'll just have to look for a new job. A lot of people change their jobs when the Saturn is in the 10th house. Very few people actually keep their job, because a lot of the time people's jobs is just not based on what their values are. Your values, your emotional needs, your intuition, your soul, which is the opposite, the 4th house, your attachments, your passions, all these things must be in alignment. Otherwise, the 10th house has no leg to stand upon. If there's no emotional investment, if only emotional investment is saying, oh, I just do what I have to do like a good robot, then goodbye, 10th house, bye-bye. So let's go on to the 11th house. Okay. The 11th house, well, I'd say it's one of the easiest houses by far for Saturn. I mean, if you want to have an easy time, you just don't want to worry about anything, have it Saturn in your 11th house. Why? Because the 11th house is about your friends, hopes, dreams, community, wishes, future ideas, air element stuff. None of this is a very heavy energy. Why? Because it's ruled by Uranus. It's about detachment, things that you're naturally not attached to. If you think about it. If the 5th house is about self-love, romance, creativity, self-image, significance, all those amazing, very close to heart things, because it's ruled by the heart, the 5th house. And if the heart is the most important organ, the most powerful organ with the brain and the body, then, of course, the 11th house is going to be the opposite of that. You're not going to really care about these things very much, let's face it. If you do, maybe you have a lot of 11th house placements, but even if you do, let's face it. Being emotionally invested in yourself is one thing, but being emotionally invested into the community is a completely different thing. So it's just not going to be very hard. Sorry to be biased, but let's just be realistic here. Let's be logical, which is good, of course. You want to have an easy time, but still, it's Saturn. So your friends, if your friends betray you, now is a good time for them to betray you. If your hopes unfounded, unrealistic. Now it's time to destroy those hopes. If your dreams are unrealistic, now it's time to make them realistic. If your community is wrong, if you're in a cult, if you're part of a group, it has nothing to do with what your real values are. If you are an extension of a community and you don't have any separate self in that group, time to get kicked out of that group, time to ruin your reputation. If your wishes are for things that are not really that important to you, if you go through life kind of detached and you don't really care about your impact upon other people, you don't really care about your future too much, now it's time to invest into your future. Because now you'll feel like something will be happening to create that sense of urgency. Ideas, if you have interesting ideas, if there's some kind of book you want to write, a project you want to create, a scientific experiment you want to have, now you'll feel like it's time to make it. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. If it doesn't happen now, it will not happen later. That's another good phrase for Saturn. If it doesn't happen now, it won't happen later. If it doesn't happen in the transits, yeah. Let's go for the next house. Is it last one? The last house of the zodiac is about what? It's about psychotic. It's about mental illness. It's about the subconscious. It's about dissolution of boundaries. About psychic phenomena. Invisible. Things that are invisible. Okay? Why is that important? Well, things that are invisible are above our ascendant. That's why it's the 12th house. The last house is right above our ascendant. So it's before we make that encounter and people can see your face and can see who you are. There's the 12th house. You're hiding these things. And it's the house of isolation. So, a lot of times, when Saturn goes through the 12th house, you will feel very isolated. You'll feel like all your subconscious issues that you've been avoiding will now bite you in the ass. Your mental health will deteriorate. Your sense of sanity will be in question. Just how sane are you? Because you may be dealing with illusions and your beliefs may be simply wrong beliefs. You may have false hopes. Your sense of self, sense of spirituality may be a fabrication. There's always something where we delude ourselves. There's always something that we are missing, something that you cannot see about yourself. And Saturn will make you see. Saturn will bring you a mirror. You may also deal with this through another person. So I've seen a lot of times people with 12th house transits, they meet a person. If the 12th house person themselves has some kind of mental issue, the person they're with is going to punish them, exploit them, or reflect on that issue some way. So for example, I had this issue before where I saw someone who had the 12th house Saturn and he was together with another person, and this person was a narcissist. The 12th house person was a narcissist. And this person that they were with, they were giving the narcissist everything they wanted. Everything was working out perfectly. The narcissist got everything they could ever dream of. But they just couldn't accept that their partner really loved them. They just couldn't get rid of the sense that they are alone. They were paranoid. This person was paranoid. He thought that all of the issues he has with his own health, with his mental sanity, he projected it upon his partner. Even though with his partner everything was fine. Because he couldn't separate himself from the other person. And so Saturn punished him for the lack of boundaries that he had. And he punished him for his illusions, everything was taken away, he lost that person, and in the end, when the transit was over, indeed, he was alone. So he had to learn how to be alone and how to look at his mental issues in the eye, because it was not possible to ignore it anymore. So that's the kind of stuff you can expect with Saturn in the 12th house. Your mental issues, whatever they may be, they may simply go out of proportion. And your partner may mirror them to you. So let's say you're not a narcissist. Let's say you're just a normal person, which you would probably be. So let's say you're in a relationship. Maybe the other person is somehow making you more self-aware. You may be with somebody who's aware of something you're doing, and you'll feel like you are more aware because they are more aware. What does this mean? Well, I said in the beginning, Saturn can come in through other people. Okay? Through other people. So it's not just events that are happening. It's not just that you get imprisoned, which very often happens, but, it doesn't have to happen, obviously. With a 12th house Saturn transit, you may also be put in confinement. You may be put into an environment that is very hostile, very unsafe, where things are very uncertain. This is a period where you can't see things clearly. And you don't know what to do with your life because you feel things are working against you that are beyond your control. And usually with a 12th house Saturn, it takes a lot of time to understand what's happening to you. Where am I deceiving myself? And deceive yourself, you do. And you must find out what is it you're doing. That you're not seeing yourself. You're in denial or something. What is it that you can't deal with? It's like clenching your teeth. Things are breaking down. Your mind is slipping away. Your trauma is just dysregulating you. You feel unstable. Your ontological security is no more. Your sense of identity isn't what you thought it should be. And your relationships are just very, very uncertain. And you're wondering, what is it that the other people are hiding from you? Not just yourself, but what is it that you can't see about others? That's why I mentioned paranoia with this example earlier. Another keyword. May make you paranoid because there are actually forces working against you. But these forces are inside of you. So there's a very strong tendency to project your issues onto somebody. And of course, it's also possible that other people will project onto you. This issue is with self-doubt. You may doubt yourself to a degree that is either too little or too much. Too little or too much, because you can't just say, oh, the 12th house is about illusion, so I must have an illusion. I must be the one who is in the wrong. The reason why things are never clear in astrology, actually they are pretty clear, but you can't just be on one side of the polarity. Everything is polarity. So it's either you are gaslighting yourself, or you're not gaslighting yourself and you're not doubting yourself enough. Issues of the 12th house are either you have something that's not working, you need to fix it and change it, or somebody is trying to make you doubt yourself, and actually what you have is working pretty well. And it's not that there's something wrong with you, but you simply need to learn how to trust yourself. And actually, that's what's very, very often behind paranoia at the core. If you are paranoid and if you are projecting, maybe you just don't trust your own judgment. And you allow your emotions to get carried away. And that's why you may be indecisive, you may be detached, and you're blaming external influences for what's happening to you because you don't take ownership, because you simply don't allow yourself to trust yourself. Yeah. The 12th house, in general, a lot of people, the more mentally ill you are, the worse it's going to be. You're going to suffer, obviously, more. But the degree of suffering is just the degree of how much you need to learn with Saturn. And that applies to all the houses in equal. So there's not like this one house worse than the other. But if one house that you're experiencing is especially bad, like you had a really, really bad experience with your Saturn transit, that was because you really, really badly needed it. You needed some kind of wake-up call. And that has been delivered to your doorstep. So you can't complain, If you need to learn, you need to learn. And with Saturn, it's always about tough lessons. So I hope that answers all your questions. I mean, you didn't ask any questions because I'm talking to myself. But it's the 12 houses. So these are the keywords you can memorize. Look at your Saturn in the transiting horoscope. Look where it is. Apply these keywords. Listen to the part of the video that you need to listen to in regards to that house. And try to learn that lesson. Try to make sure that Saturn doesn't need to punish you, doesn't need to make you uncomfortable. And if you can't, if for example there's nothing that you can see that you have to change, then don't change, Just wait for things to take care of themselves, because Saturn will simply show you what it is that you need to do. All you need to do is to cooperate, understand what's happening. Just try to take responsibility for your life. I mean, if there's anything that Saturn wanted to teach you, then it's that. Just take responsibility. So if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. And thanks for watching.